All right, welcome back. We're gonna do some Golden Axe today. I was feeling really tired after work, but I've been planning to play since early this morning. So I've just decided I was gonna just crash, and I was like, no, you know what? I've been looking forward to playing all day. I'm not gonna just crash like that. So this game, I think, is in my opinion, probably the first mega hit on the Genesis. It was really popular in the arcades, I guess, so a lot of people wanted it. I think it's okay. It's just there's other beat 'em ups on the Genesis I think are better, but I do like it. I kind of skipped that cutscene and I didn't mean to. I just thought the screen wouldn't advance if I didn't press it. Alright, so let me see if I remember the controls here. Alright. I don't think I'll beat this one. I usually adjust the health bars a little bit, because one thing that's kind of special about this one is that it actually has an extra level that wasn't in the arcade. And that level can get pretty tough. So the thing I don't really like about this one too much is that I actually think the basic clicking the button to hit feels good. I like the move sets where they don't just swing; they kind of just beat the bejesus out of the guy. So that's cool, but when you're not on one of these animals or something, it's not even the optimal way to. There's just jumping up and hitting people and doing the little dash run is more effective. It's safer in a lot of situations, and the problem with that is that it gets a little bit exhausting to do. I prefer Streets of Rage, which is a ways out, but I do like the world in this one. I like the cheesy OD&D Conan the Barbarian feel of Golden Axe, and the music is rocking, and the little critters and the way the animations on character, look at those guys being all smug back there. There's so much I like, and for an early game, it's one of the better 89 games overall. It's one of those things where it just suffers from a little bit, I think, from being so early in the lifespan, and there being better beat 'em ups that will come later. But it's still cool. I mean, it's kind of just a classic at this point. I like the characters. It's one of those franchises I wish they would do more with, and I never got to play the 361, the Beast Riders or whatever. I never got to play that. So kind of like we did with I keep wanting to say Starship Troopers. Like we did with Space Harrier 2. I'm probably not going to be able to beat this one on this run, so this is more of a sampling. Kind of get my feet wet back into it again. But it is also, like Space Harrier, I know it's one I can beat. I like how they do that. They have these little narrations in between. It makes it feel kind of like a D&D campaign, but a very, very hack and slash one, where there's not a whole lot of exploration or NPC dialogue. It's just running the combat over and over again. Which I wonder how common that was at the time. I feel like Dungeons and Dragons got more like that with later editions because the combat was more involved. Combat in early D&D actually is kind of weak. It's just not that involved, right? So that's kind of intentional. It's sort of to encourage you to avoid it, because it's not necessarily a rewarding experience every time you fight something. And they tried to make it so gold would give you more EXP. So there's more incentive to like avoid fighting and just come out of dungeons with all the treasure. I'm gonna run away with you guys too. Like, you know, he's supposed to be a dwarf, but he's like way bigger than all those people. I'm sure that's been pointed out before, but I kind of just noticed it. Yeah, playing this arcade edition without any kind of modifications. Don't feel like I have much of a chance. But yeah, I almost didn't play anything. I came home like just exhausted, and it's so hot right now. It's just too hot to be alive. And it's why I got this bicycle that I just bought, and I wanted to start getting really into biking and maybe start commuting and stuff. And I know that I have to tolerate all kinds of weather conditions to get really serious about biking. Like, I'm going to have to deal with heat, I'm going to have to deal with cold, I'm going to have to deal with rain, all that. And I want to do that. I want to get to that point, but I also feel like, can I please do it on a weekend? Where, like, when I'm still getting used to it, like, I could come back home after an hour's ride and, like, chill out for a little bit and get cool again and, like, just, like, kind of slowly get into it. 'Cause, like, coming home from work and doing it right now, just, I'm not ready for all that. But I'm a little worried because I think it's going to rain most of the week, so I feel like I kind of am missing an opportunity. But I don't think there is an industrial crane that could get me out there right now. Village is on the back of a giant turtle. The turtle takes us south across the sea. And like even the little drawings and stuff, it just feels like something like a dungeon master would do. It's kind of fun. Oh, I've never had that happen to me before. Yeah, I'll continue. Yeah, I'm still thinking that what I'm gonna do is probably play all of the 89 games. Like, just kind of sample them. If I beat them, great. If not, whatever. And then, after I've kind of played each one, because there's not that many. There's only like 16. After I've played each one, I will start thinking about how... I'm not going to get any of these, but I don't need them anyway. This is annoying. I wonder if I can only aggro one of them at a time. That would be nice. Yeah. All kinds of little tricks like that you kind of use throughout the game to try to limit how much you're doing at once. Especially in the new level, the level that's set in the arcade version. These guys come out, yep. There's another one too that joins it. Yep. Oops. Timing on that, I guess, is a little off. I feel like I used to be able to do that. But I'm gonna say it once again, man. I think the shaders on Blast are beautiful. This is the best I've ever gotten Genesis games to look. I'm playing on a pretty small screen. It's like a very little like laptop screen. I'm not sure what the inches are, but it ain't big. I'll tell you that. Though I gotta say, like, I kind of think playing video games on smaller screens is better. If I'm watching a movie, I like having a big screen, but, you know, I've got a pretty large TV here that I could hook this up to, but I'm a little bit worried about lag. And it's also just kind of uncomfortable to make adjustments. I'd be too far away from the microphone, and I don't want to wear a headset. But I know, like, even like competitive guys, it feels like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, I don't play competitive fighting games, but I feel like whenever I've seen stuff from like Evo or whatever, the screens are pretty small because you just feels like you can kind of see everything at once. Okay, now. So here's one where this is typically all I do to fight this guy. Just run back and forth, and it's just constant double tapping. Isn't all that fun, but it's a really safe way to deal with him. So why wouldn't I do it? Something like a lot of these older Sega games seem to lack is like ways of getting extra lives. There's oftentimes, I mean, like Space Harrier had it, but Space Harrier, the extra lives are also, oh yeah, here's the Fiend's Path. This area is kind of tough, as I remember. It's also not really the same thing as getting extra lives in Space Harrier, because those extra lives are essentially the same as a health bar, since it's one-hit kills. But like in this game, you know, you have health bar increases, but you don't get any kind of extra lives that, as far as I know. You just get what you get when you start. Not that the game's impossible or anything, and if I were to pump up my life bar, I would be beating it this round. I'm pretty confident. If not this, then I could just do it on a second. And I'm sure I can beat it with normal life bars, and maybe even on less than normal and harder difficulties and things. I'm pretty sure I could do that. But it's just interesting that, like, extra lives is something we associate so much with these classic games. We don't really have a whole lot of them in this early set. Revenge of Shinobi might. I don't know, I haven't played that one in a long time. That's a favorite among fans of pre-Sonic Sega Genesis. I like it. I can't say that I've gotten too into it, though. It's tough. It's a hard game. But it's definitely a series. It's one of those Sega series where, like, as someone who considers themselves a fan, I want to get more into. I want to, like, make myself like it more. Golden Axe is kind of that way, too. I mean, there's 3 of these on the console. I actually used to live near this arcade. It was as an adult. I lived for like 2 years in this city that had an arcade that had a Revenge of Death Adder machine, which is not only the best Golden Axe game, but it's the one that like never got ported. Maybe more recently they did. I think there was one of those like mini consoles that was like a mini arcade machine that actually had Revenge of Death Adder on it. But for a long time, there was no way to play that one, and it was very strange because it felt like a shoo-in for a Saturn port. Because on the Saturn, they were doing all kinds of arcade ports and things, which I mean, I guess Sega's always has, because that's the one area where Sega has always done well, is arcades. That's partly why I think they feel so different from Nintendo. I mean, both Nintendo and Sega have an arcade pedigree, but I think Nintendo overall did much better when they went to the home market, and once Nintendo went to the home market, there really wasn't much arcade game from them to speak of. it wasn't zero, but you didn't see Nintendo arcade machines come out that often. Sega never stopped developing, really, for the arcade. I mean, because like even when they got some success with the Genesis, we would still see big titles from them, like Daytona USA and Virtua Fighter, to kind of headline the next generation. And back in the day, Golden Axe, Altered Beast, Space Harrier, these were big Sega arcade machines, and so a lot of the marketing for old school Sega games seems to have kind of gone from either arcade ports or celebrity endorsements, because especially early on you see a lot of that. Like you'll see sports games, it's like John Elway football, and then even some weird ones like Michael Jackson Moonwalker, things like that. So I think this was the last level in the arcade. I mentioned I don't think I talked at all about like how I got into Sega. Because when I was a kid, I was like 4 years old when my parents bought a NES. And I now know it was more for them than me. But the funny thing is, they didn't really stick to it. They might have bought it for themselves, but that didn't seem to last very long. But it lasted with me. I liked it, but I only had a few games for it. I could probably name every game I had for that console, because I had Super Mario Brothers, and it was the cart that came with Duck Hunt and World Class Track Meet. So we had like the pad and everything for World Class Track Meet. And then I also had, by the end of my time with it, I had Batman, Ninja Turtles, Iron Sword. It was the second Wizards and Warriors game. Top Gun Second Mission, which I think is one of the first games we ever got. And I think that was it. I think I ended up trading something for something else down the line. But for the most part, I rented some games here and there. But I only had those couple of games. I had an uncle that had a Sega Genesis. And I remember visiting, because he was younger, and so he was living still with my grandparents. And visiting down there, I got to see Sonic the Hedgehog 2, I remember. And that just blowing my mind. And, I was convinced, I say it to this day, I have never in my life wanted a physical object more than I wanted a Sega Genesis. There's been nothing before or since that I wanted that bad. And I asked for it constantly. However, my little brother was also being born at the time, so that wasn't really a priority. And not that I blame my brother for not getting a Genesis, really. I know that sounds terrible. That's not what I mean at all. It is, now as an adult, I kind of contextualize more why I didn't get one sooner. And it's well, I mean, we had a new baby coming in. It's expensive, and we were moving and stuff a lot at that point in time. I did, though, eventually get one. I got it late because I got the Genesis kind of the same year that the Saturn came out. But I wanted it so bad, I was cool with that, and I really wouldn't be desperate for something new for at least a couple years. In a kid's mind, a couple years is 3 decades. But what I remember that's kind of funny, and the story I always tell is that I got it for Christmas, and I had a dream that I was at an award show, the Academy Awards, accepting it and thanking my parents and thanking God and all that stuff. And I always like to think now, if that happened now, I had that same dream. Kanye West would come out and take the microphone away from me and say, I'm real proud of you and I'm going to let you finish. But the Super Nintendo was the greatest game of all time. But the cool thing though about getting the Sega Genesis late was that I ended up having a really big library for it. So like I said, I only had 4 or 5 games for my NES, but because I got that Genesis, like when people stopped caring about Sega Genesis, they were all ready to move on to PlayStation and N64, and a select few were moving on to the Saturn. But especially with those like PlayStation converts and stuff, like I remember like being able to buy new games complete in box for like $15. Like, it was great. It was like my library increased so much, so fast, because of that. And then I also had like relatives and neighbors and stuff that had moved on, and some people would just give me games. That same uncle gave me several more games from his library because retro gaming was not a thing back then. Gaming itself, home gaming itself, was still relatively new, and nobody really thought about these as collectibles. So people were just giving me, oh, that's it. Yeah, so I had one more level to go after that. People were just giving me games. I had a neighbor that gave me a bunch of sports titles. I had uncles that gave me a bunch of stuff. So I ended up with a very big library, and that's kind of how I got interested in Genesis. No new scores today so far. I'm probably going to play one more game. But that is our little sample of Golden Axe. Definitely something I'll be coming back to. I know I can get a point off of this. I'm probably going to get at least 3 because I can do it with all 3 characters pretty easily. If I adjust the difficulty stuff, then it won't be a problem at all. But this will probably be a heavy hitter down the run. I think this and Altered Beast are pretty easy for you to get points off of. So let's try something else. See you guys soon.